Greetings, everyone. I have a question for you. Things being as they are, do you still believe that God is in the details? Do you have the faith to stand still and know that He is still in control? If things are not out of hand for God, can you hold on to that? I think it's very important in a time like this that we trust the Lord and know that He is still in every detail. And not only is He in the detail, He is not like a fireman with a hose trying to put the fire out. God is not wringing His hands wondering what He's going to do next, because the Lord saw this from miles away and He has everything in His hands. And I want to encourage you to know that though your world might be getting a little shaky, you may be laid off of your job, the Lord already knew that. And He's got control of all of these things. And He's got His hand on the church today. Psalms 37 and 23 through 25. The Lord directs the steps of the godly. He delights in every detail of their lives. Though they stumble, they will never fall, for the Lord holds them by the hand. Once I was young and now I'm old, yet I've never seen the godly abandoned, or their children begging for bread. We'll never be abandoned by God. We may be abandoned by our better reasoning and abandoned by what we thought were plans that were set in stone. Plans can change like the weather, but our God is the same as He was yesterday, the way He was from the beginning. But we're the ones that fluctuate, and we're the ones that change. And hopefully, going through all of this, we change for the better. God is faithful, and God is merciful, and He has His hand on His church today. 2 Samuel chapter 11, verse 1. It happened in the spring of the year, at the time when kings go out to battle, that David sent Joab and his servants with him, and all Israel. And they destroyed the people of Ammon and besieged Rabbah. But David remained at Jerusalem. Now that's just the first verse of that chapter. And if that was the only verse of the chapter, you would say, well, that short chapter is about David sending his men to a battle that he didn't think was necessary for him to attend. And possibly so. But most of you know the rest of the story, that he set himself up by not going into battle. He set himself up for a failure, and it's one that affected him to the end of his life. He sure didn't go into that decision thinking about the possible repercussions and the fallout that would continue to follow him. But it was probably a momentary decision. You know, he looked around, surveyed all that he had done and all the things that God had given him, and thought, this would be a good time to, maybe take it easy and let my men, they're well able, they're capable, and I'll let them do it. There's a parable of the man who had full barns, and he thought in his heart, he said to himself, I think I will tear down my barns and build bigger barns. And there was nothing wrong with that, because he realized he had fared sumptuously. He probably was rewarding himself a little bit, and so I think I'll tear down my barns and build bigger barns. And then when I fill them up, then I'll say to my soul, soul, take thine ease and just look at all you've got saved. You have these things saved so that you don't have to want any more. You're protecting yourself against ever having to beg for anything or worry about anything. And the Lord spoke to him and said, thou fool, this night, this day, thy soul is required of thee. Because of a thought. He never put the plan into action, but because of a thought. Now, David said, I think I'm going to stay home from the battle. But he didn't just think, but it was his actions that brought judgment to him, and judgment that followed him and affected his life. Timing is so important. And the man that tore his barns down That's a similar situation that happened to David, because David tore some things down and they didn't get built back up the right way. But he looked at it through the eyes of success. Look at what I've done. Look at what I've gained. And it was the wrong time, because, see, it was the season. He said it was the time, the spring of the year, the time when kings go forth to battle. And he was out of sync with the season. And it's important that we understand what season we're in. And we look around us and we know life is different, just practically around the globe. I mean, no one's life is the same as it was 6 weeks or 2 months ago. And, you know, we will always remember this. But it's a season we're going through. And it's not the time for me to say, soul, take thine ease. And I don't think anybody's going to do that. There's no fear there. But I must see about the season that we're going through personally and say, what can I do to equip myself to go through this season and gain the greatest benefit from it? You know, even to stay at home wasn't wrong for David. And I'm thankful today that staying home isn't wrong for us today, because where a lot of us are having to stay at home. But see, it's okay to stay at home if we don't stop fighting our battle. What David did, he stayed at home and then he didn't protect himself. So as we are going through this series and season of staying at home, we have to readjust. We have to realize that we can still become attacked in our homes by the enemy. Or we can undermine our foundation ourselves by growing too lax or not being aware of our weaknesses. We have to be very diligent in a time like this, even in our homes, and say to yourself, not, hey, take it easy. It's not a time to take thine ease. But as we are in our homes, we must say, let's take this opportunity to advance on the enemy. Let's equip ourselves with the sword of the Spirit. Let's equip ourselves with the Word of God. And let's learn like we've never learned. Let's go through these chapters and verses and let's put them in our heart, and let's make up ground that we'll never lose. Let's do some things in our spirit life that we will draw from for months and years to come. Because right now the enemy would love nothing more than for the church just to kind of rock themselves to sleep. Because, you know, we're at home a lot. We're just at home. We're just at home. But our homes are places where we win the battles. Our homes are the places where we learn that a prayer room is not just at the church. It's a place where we grow in grace and knowledge. Become familiar with the Word of God. Get a hold of some of those things that you've wondered about and put it in your heart. See, David failed to see that it was all God's business. You know, he thought, well, the battle, you know, we've got enough men to fight that battle. But he forgot that he has to win the battle at his home too, and that's where he lost the battle. He failed to see that God was in every detail. God ordered every step of that victory. You know, God's the one that sent Samuel to anoint David in front of his family. And yet, at a time when David truly needed to continue to do what seemed to be just too easy. I don't really need to fight this time. I can leave my armor in the closet this time. But he really needed to behave himself at home. Because how we are at home is going to affect how we are when we walk out of our doors every time. Well, I think that applies to us today. Genesis 39:7, it came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast a longing eye at Joseph and said, lie with me. But he refused. Isn't that great? Do you see the contrast between these two stories? At a time when kings go forth to battle, David stayed home. And in the home that Joseph worked in, he was tempted. And he said, look, my master does not know what is with me in the house, and he's committed all that he has into my hand. In other words, he trusts me so much that he doesn't even know how much money he has. He doesn't even know how much fuel or how much stock he has in his barns. He doesn't know. He's put that all in my hand. There's no one greater in his house than I, nor has he kept back anything from me but you, because you're his wife. He draws lines. And what Joseph is saying is, I draw lines too. I'm not going where my master wouldn't want me to go? How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? He could have said, I'm not going to sin against my master, but what he's letting Potiphar's wife know is, if I do this and succumb to temptation, I'm sinning against God. Now, the master too, but I'm sinning against God. I'm being held to a higher standard. I'm answering to a higher power. Being in a foreign country and, supposedly forgotten by his family, he figured, he still held on to his integrity, because it's not like who's watching. Because he could really have said to himself, well, I doubt anybody that knows me will ever find me, because I'm here under duress. I have to do this. I was sold. I belong to them. They paid money for me. So I belong to them. Yet he held on to his integrity when the only benefit was he was pleasing God. That's all. That's it. He didn't have any other benefit. Just, I'm pleasing God. And he had convictions that went all the way with him into a foreign country, into the house he was in. And he behaved himself in the house that he was in. It wasn't the house he would choose, but it was the house that he was in. If God put me here, he said, he's the one that's ordering my steps. If God didn't put me here, he knows I'm here, and he's ordering my steps. But see, he has a next page. He has a next paragraph. He has a next chapter. God always does. So we're not ever doing something in a vacuum. It's not ever about just now, because God has got his hand on now. He's got his hand on tomorrow. He's got his hand on the next day. How many Josephs had been right at the brink of greatness, and they succumbed to that mistress of opportunity, and they missed out on the throne room. They missed out on an advancement. He was right there, and he could have succumbed. And then, because he refused, she lied about him, and he ended up in the dungeon of the prison. And in the prison, he was given authority over all the prisoners because God's favor was with him. And whenever he told the butler and the baker, hey, when you guys get out of here, please remember me. And the king remembered them. Well, the baker didn't make it because he didn't get a reprieve. But the butler was found innocent and was at the right place at the perfect time when the king had a dream that troubled him. And he said, oh no, I've done a terrible thing. I forgot about an innocent man. And it was the innocent man that God sent there with more than one purpose. Think about this. We look in front of us and say, well, I've got to do the will of God today. There's deeper things than today about today, because today is going to lead to tomorrow. The seeds you plant today, you may not reap the harvest of those seeds for months. Could be weeks and days. But I have to make sure today in my house, I do the will of God. I need to make sure today I give God my very, very best. 1 Samuel 13, this is about Saul. Then he waited 7 days, verse 8, according to the time set by Samuel. But Samuel did not come to Gilgal, and the people were scattered from him. And so he went ahead and offered the burnt offering. And then when he got through, Samuel showed up. In verse 11, and Samuel said, what have you done? And Saul said, when I saw the people were scattered from me, and that you did not come within the days appointed, and the Philistines gathered together at Michmash, then I said. Now, forgive me for this next little portion. I'm not in any way putting myself in the place of Samuel, but I want to look at this through the understanding and the observations of Saul. He said, when I saw that you weren't there, then I said, you know what? I'm just going to do this. I saw you weren't there, and I saw how the people were kind of causing me to feel under pressure. I saw you weren't there. Well, understand, I can't be everywhere. I'm an overseer. That's the word, pastor, overseer. And I pray for the church every day. And I try to make sure to take time to do these devotions every day. But I don't see and I don't know everything. But I'm asking church, please, live your life in this environment that we have that's been recently cast upon us. Live it as if you have me over for coffee every day. Why? Because God is there. And He's in your homes and He's in your hearts. And let's walk upright before the Lord. And why am I saying all of this? Here's the deal. We're going to be back together. And we may not be all back. It may start with 40 or 50 here, and then, we may work up to it. We're going to do what we have to do. But we are going to be all back together. And I hope when we get back together that we have a church that is so prayed up and that is so on fire and so excited to be back that we have a service that's greater than the last one we had. And the last one we had was phenomenal. I don't know what we could do to top that. We may have to actually see angels walking around. That's all right with me. But what we're doing now is going to affect that, because that affects this. And I have no doubt, I have no fear. I really believe we're going to get back together and do right. I'm just reminding you today. I'm just saying, hey, let's be sure we watch ourselves and do the right thing. Samuel said to Saul, you have done foolishly. Well, I want to say to Grace Point Church, you've done awesome. You all that have helped out during these times, our staff and ministry team, you've done awesome. And those of you that gather together on Wednesdays and Sundays to watch our services, thank you so much for your comments. It does them well, because we're here going through all these motions, doing everything that we would in a service in utter silence. We're going to love feedback when we get back here, and we're going to thrive on it. We're going to bask in it. But let God lead you to a higher place while you're going through your low place. Here we are at home, but let's allow our homes to be a sanctuary. Let's let our homes be places where we can lift up the name of Jesus and make Him known and create opportunities and testimonies that'll last us through the rest of the week and to the rest of the time until we get back here to church. Until then, God bless you. Hope to see you tomorrow at church. Tune in.